Every year in this country, approximately 100,000 young people exit the formal custody of the juvenile justice system. This transition, which often occurs during a critical time in a youth's development, can be difficult, and many youth are unsuccessful in reconnecting to school or work. Many end up homeless or reincarcerated. But research has shown that school attendance is a strong protective factor against delinquency, and that youth who attend school are much less likely to commit crime in both the short and long term. The return to and re-engagement in school for eligible youth should be a high priority for states and local entities. But successful transition requires individualized planning from the moment a youth enters secure care, academic and behavioral supports during incarceration, and aftercare supports that help youth succeed following their exit from formal custody. In this installment of NDTAC's NND InFocus, we'll dive deeper into what some jurisdictions are doing to make successful transitions a reality. To help us set the stage on this issue, we're pleased to have joining us today NDTAC expert panelist Dr. Heather Griller-Clark. Dr. Clark is a research specialist at Arizona State University, where her current focus is on Merging Two Worlds, a state-funded transition curriculum, and Project RISE, a model demonstration grant funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs, which focuses on transitioning youth with disabilities out of the juvenile justice system. Dr. Clark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
So, Dr. Clark, from your experience, I'm wondering if you can describe for us the landscape, if you will, of youth in out-of-home secure care placement when it comes to education. What are their situations like from an academic standpoint?
Well, we know that youth in secure care are more likely to have a disability, whether that be learning disability, emotional behavior disorder, than those who are not in secure care. We also know that the majority of youth in secure care have been suspended or expelled from school, and that in general their school is not their thing. They're more likely to be performing below their grade level than their peers, sometimes by as much as 3 years. And in general, they're a very transient population. When they are in a secure care setting and are more stable and have the opportunity to attend school on a daily basis, sometimes that in and of itself is new for them.
Now, research has shown that periods of detention or incarceration actually have the potential to improve a young person's academics or his or her educational experiences. Does quality education in these settings have that potential, in your opinion?
I think the potential is huge. If kids are invested and if they feel that their teachers are invested and their teachers are supported in receiving high-quality professional development and they have the resources that they need, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for kids to make significant academic gains. And I've seen that in practice because, they are in this secure care setting and they can focus on their education. They don't have to worry about things like safety and where they're going to sleep that night and the next meal they're going to have. They're a captive audience, and that truly can make a huge difference because for some of them, it's the first time or the first opportunity they've had to really focus on school and not be preoccupied with just life in general. And I think if you take that and you couple it with a teacher who has high expectations for students and believes that they can learn and that they're employing best practices in terms of instruction and resources that they have at their disposal, I think the gains that students can make in that type of setting are incredible.
So, assuming young people do make progress academically while they're in secure care, does that success typically continue when they're back in the community?
That transition process is extremely challenging. I've spent a lot of my time and energy on that process because just like it's a generalization phase, there are so many good things that can happen when kids are detained or incarcerated, and they can begin to make dramatic progress academically, socially, behaviorally. But then sometimes what we see is that that progress is stunted once they're released, or they even take a few steps backwards. And I think that's generally due to, the fact that they're not in that secure care environment anymore. Their setting's not structured. They have all kinds of other variables that they have to now, again, deal with, whether it be family or living situation or substances or peers. I think that all of those variables that come into contact with youth makes that process really challenging.
So it sounds like more needs to be done to make this transition a little more manageable for the youth. And I'm guessing secure care facilities play a role in that, but I'm also guessing there are some challenges. Do facilities struggle in their work to successfully transition youth back into the community?
Absolutely. I think there's always the challenge of we don't know when the youth is going to be released. Release dates in the past really were, they wavered, and nobody really knew when a kid was going to leave. And now I see some good policies put into place around school. Kids can't leave in the middle of a block or a quarter. They need to wait until the end. So I think, really taking a look at the whole release procedure and how that plays out, and when a student is ready to go, just because they've met their minimum release date or just because there's a bed available in a residential placement doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best time for that youth to be released. I think there are other factors that need to come into play, and education being one of them. I think it also, there needs to be some procedures in play where everybody is on the same page. If you have community parole or probation at the table and other community providers at the table, I think at release boards, so that everyone's aware of what the plan is for an individual once they are released, then everybody has an equal role to play, and there are no surprises. I think that can go a long way towards planning and proactively addressing issues that may arise. In addition to making sure that everybody's on the same page and that we know when kids are released, I think that information and the flow of information has to go hand in hand with that. Frequently, there's this lag time in terms of both receiving records into a facility, but also in moving records out of the facility. So when a youth is released, there's information that needs to go with that youth. What did he or she participate in while they were here? Not just in terms of programming, but academically as well. Are there transcripts? Are there portfolio documents? Are there certificates that need to go with the youth once they're released? So that flow of information is just as important as the youth themselves when they're released.
And obviously, successful transition involves more than just what the facilities are doing. So where do the community schools struggle in reconnecting and reengaging the youth who are returning from secure care settings?
Some of the challenges for community schools receiving kids back from secure care, I think awareness is also one of the challenges. Many schools, personnel, people are not aware of what a secure care facility looks like, or even the fact that kids do go to school while they're detained or while they're incarcerated, and that they're real schools with real certified teachers. And I think we've made great strides in that area, but I think that that is still a significant challenge. Awareness that, yes, kids do go to school, they can earn credits, we have high academic standards, and we have highly qualified teachers, and our credits are just as good as anyone else's. In general, they also don't know where to go. If they do have concerns an individual and his or her academic performance or behavior, what do they do? Do they call a probation or parole officer? They may not be familiar with the justice process and how it works. They may not be familiar with the players that are involved. They may not know that, for example, this individual has a transition specialist, and that person is assisting them make good academic choices and helping them in enrollment and helping them figure out the way, whether it be school or work. So I think that, again, schools aren't aware of all the resources that support or wrap around kids in the juvenile justice system. I also think that schools may think that students from juvenile justice are always going to be behavior problem students. And, in general, that's not the case. Are many of them? Yeah, yes, but not all of them. And even if they are behavior problems, there are ways in which the support staff around that juvenile can help schools address that. So I think if community schools know who to contact related to a specific juvenile, and if they were more aware of all the supports and services around that juvenile, they may be more likely to give that kid a chance.
So, Dr. Clark, in thinking about all the work that you've done and the research you've been a part of, what are some of the most important steps facilities and community schools working together can take to help make this transition out of secure care back into the schools more successful?
Well, I would say the first is awareness, and I've talked about that quite a bit. Awareness is really broad, and it encompasses not just that we're aware of what our kids look like when they come to us, where they come to us from, what their gaps or strengths or weaknesses may be, but also awareness in terms of what resources or services do we have available to us to assist that youth, not just behind the fence, but also in the community. And awareness in terms of systems and what are the system-wide strengths of an agency, and maybe what are some of their weaknesses or areas of need. I think awareness involves taking a critical look at services and the transition process and really figuring out where you're good and where you're not good, and coming up with a plan to address those areas where you may not be as strong as you could be. And then awareness in terms of information sharing. I think that is huge. We need to find more systematic, streamlined ways of sharing information across jurisdictions and even within jurisdictions. I mean, sometimes within facilities, housing unit staff aren't always aware of behavioral issues with a youth. And I think we really need to focus on ways in which we can share information in a systemic, consistent way. Number two, I think a dedicated person or a transition specialist can really assist in making or helping youth be more successful, both behind the fence and once they're released. I think if you have a dedicated person, a responsible party, people know who to contact. There's a point person if you need information. It's also the responsibility of that person to share information. It's also one more individual that's invested in that youth, and that investment needs to start on day one when the youth is behind the fence. It can't be a handoff because there needs to, they need to build rapport. They need to build a relationship. It shouldn't be just another person that comes into and out of that youth life for a very short time. It's important that that person, that dedicated person, is there for the aftercare part as well. It needs to be someone who knows educational jargon, who's familiar with special ed laws and policies and procedures. It should be someone who has an awareness of all the community resources and services and educational programs that are available. And that's a lot to put on somebody who has another job already. And that's why I say that there needs to be a dedicated person that's responsible for that academic transition, because it's so much more than just academics. The third thing that really needs to happen to assist with transition is that there needs to be sustainable resources to support it, whether that be to support the position of a transition specialist, or whether that be to support programs behind the fence or personnel. There needs to be a sustainable funding stream. We shouldn't cut services because of budget issues. And I'm sure most people know the cost-benefit analysis of serving kids in the community versus serving kids behind the fence. And so it really is in everyone's best interest to have resources available so that we can strengthen and make that transition more successful.
Well, thank you again for joining us today, Dr. Clark. It was so great talking with you.
It's my pleasure.
The rest of today's program examines the critical points within a youth's experience in out-of-home secure care, entering into a facility and the time spent in residence, and exiting the facility and returning back to the community. We turn first to NDTAC's Alexandra Woods and her exploration of the transition efforts of the Indiana Department of Correction Division of Youth Services.
Indiana's Department of Corrections operates 4 main juvenile correctional facilities around the state, which house nearly 400 youth on any given day. In 2011, more than 1,000 youth exited one of these facilities and returned to the community. 70% of those youth achieved some level of transition success, including re-enrolling in public schools as well as college and other post-secondary education, obtaining GEDs, and gaining employment. We wanted to find out what the department's Division of Youth Services, or DYS, is doing to help make these transitions successful. Judy McIntosh is the division's state transition specialist, providing oversight of all transition-related practices involving DYS students. She shared with us the division's transition structures and processes.
Transition activities are shared basically at all facilities. We have transition coordinators at every site. We also employ a transition specialist at Logansport Juvenile, and teachers take an active role in the transition process by participating in the consultations on an ongoing basis. And teachers may also be involved in teaching vocational or career classes. And as the state transition specialist, I oversee all the activities and processes at all of the state facilities. The transition process for our students begins upon intake. So the initial assessments garner individual results that help us place students in programs and classrooms according to need. And our initial steps lead to the development of ILPs, individual learning plans, and then on to the transition consultation conducted every 2 to 4 weeks with every student. We believe all this information offers a clear and concise plan for each individual.
The initial assessments conducted with students during orientation once at a DOC facility are wide-ranging and include academic assessments like the Shipley II and the Wide Range Achievement Test, risk and needs assessment screenings like the Indiana Youth Assessment System and the Massachusetts Youth Screening Instrument, and youth aptitude and personality screenings like John Holland's Self-Directed Search and the Student Styles Questionnaire. All of this new information supplements the student's school and other records, which DYS staff receive upon request from previous placements. When it comes to a youth's education and accompanying support services, DYS staff rely on individual learning plans.
Now, our individual learning plans, or what we call our ILPs, contain this information. along with the test scores from the Shipley and the RAT initially mentioned, with objectives for students while they're enrolled, barriers to reaching goals, and a beginning transition plan. Initial ILPs are reviewed with our individual students and copied and shared with parents and recorded in our electronic student information management system, something we call SIMS, to share with all education and treatment staff.
Within the last year, DYS has added some elements to the ILPs to expand them toward more robust transition plans.
First, when we send the student's ILP home for the parents' review, we also send a parent interview form so that parents may offer their feedback regarding their students' personalities, interests, skills, goals, and future plans. And secondly, we've also implemented transition consultations. These consultations take place between a teacher and a student throughout the student's stay. Teachers basically interview students every 2 to 4 weeks and ask transition-related questions in order to develop a more defined transition plan for each student. Students and teachers discuss things like recreation and leisure interests, living situations, current relationships with others, and more.
And while the expansion of the ILPs is still a work in progress, DYS staff feel these efforts are helping to improve the agency's overall transition activities and outcomes across facilities. The transition process is highly structured within the DOC's juvenile facilities. The system ensures that students and all staff with whom they interact are on the same page, from academics to behavioral and other supports to transition. The structure is very much designed to make the process of youth leaving a facility and returning to a community school as seamless as possible, with major focus on preparing schools to receive students from the facilities.
First of all, our students work their way through several levels while enrolled, and once they earn what we call transition status, our transition coordinators contact the intended schools for enrollment, either via phone or fax, and we introduce the student to the school by supplying a current school schedule or a progress form and presenting any awards or certificates received throughout enrollment. So we work to show the positive accomplishments of the students in our care and would like to make that introduction or reintroduction as positive as possible. And then once the student receives release status, then we again make contact with the school and begin the process of forwarding the student's portfolio, which includes an official transcript, the ILP, the individual learning plan, and or the IEP for those students with special education needs. It could have a student overview, which is generated from SIMS. It includes the transition consultations, a student progress report, and any and all test results, including any psychoeducational testing, as well as updated immunization records. After release and the records have been sent, transition coordinators check back with the schools to secure an enrollment date, and this information is compiled on a monthly transition report.
Because of the coordinated system in place for transitioning youth out of DOC facilities, DYS staff are readily prepared for each youth's release and are seldom surprised by a youth leaving a facility unexpectedly. Mark Canola is DYS's program director. According to Mark,
what we do is we have what's called a projected program completion date system, and that PPCD date drives all of the activities that a student participates in. And then what we try to do is we break that PPCD down into different level systems, and each level has a purpose. And each level is about 4 weeks in length facility. And when they are promoted to these levels, that information is then communicated back to all departments. So everyone is keeping track of where a student's at on their level, in their level system. And different levels trigger different activities happening with students. So we know that as a student hits level 3 or 4, that's going to be triggering some of our transition and our reentry level interventions and programming with the students. Typically, there's not too many surprises as far as release dates go because we are communicating that. And all students, before they are, or as they're nearing release, have to go through administrative review committee. And the Administrative Review Committee, I don't like using the term, it's like a parole board. Anybody looking from the outside, it looks like a parole board, but it's not as perhaps negative as a parole board. It really is it's the superintendent, the principal, the program director, the head of mental health, transition staff are invited, and everyone comes and discusses the student's progress, and everyone votes on whether or not that student is ready to be released, and then they assign a final date of when that student's being released. So that ARC committee is also a final trigger that everyone needs to get everything together for that student to release them. So for the most part, we don't really run into too many surprises.
And the students in Indiana's juvenile facilities are poised to make successful returns because of the work completed while in residence. All students earn credits towards high school graduation through their coursework in DOC facilities. Here again is Judy McIntosh.
All of our courses are based on the Indiana state standards and must meet those standards so that when our students do earn the credits here, that information is shared with the school that they return to, and the Department of Education issued a statement explaining to schools that those credits were to be accepted upon the student's return.
Because community schools expect to see the progress of the students they receive from DYS-run facilities, staff work hard to ensure that all students' accomplishments are accurately captured and recorded and made available to receiving schools.
Our students' work and achievements are documented in our electronic student information management system, which is forwarded to the next school following a student's release. Our contact may include adult basic education programs, including our Indiana Department of Workforce Development, which Lindsay spoke of earlier, for those seeking GED and task completion and or any other training.
DYS makes it a point to follow up on students who have left their care to see how and what they are doing. Chris Black, a transition coordinator with DYS, is responsible for that, and she works closely with Judy to track students.
I track the high school students by calling the parent or calling the high school, but I also can use the STN site to see if they have been enrolled somewhere besides us.
And that STN site is with our Indiana Department of Education, so that gives us a lot of information about where our students are. But we not only can contact high schools and middle schools when kids return, but if kids are going to adult basic education programs, we can share information with them if we follow certain procedures, so to help them attain their goals after release.
DYS staff's transition efforts are not limited to those students returning to middle and high schools upon release. They also focus on helping eligible and interested students access a range of post-secondary education options. The DOC's juvenile facilities all offer programs and testing for GED and TASC, or Test Assessing Secondary Completion. Eligible students are able to complete their high school equivalency test in an effort to facilitate entry into various post-secondary education options. Lindsay Pounds, a program coordinator at the Logansport Juvenile Correctional Facility, runs a workshop focused on college and works closely with students on track to enter post-secondary education. She explores with these students the many options available to them and how best to access those options.
We discussed that college doesn't necessarily always mean a four-year college. It can mean a technical school or a certification or even an associate's or bachelor's degree. So it kind of shows them that they can attend. A lot of them feel like it is unattainable to go to any post-secondary education. So we try and show them that that is attainable for them and then show them ways that they can move forward and pay for college.
One of the institutions in Indiana that many students apply to and go on to attend is InFocus, which has a straightforward online application process. DYS staff work closely with students to assist them with the steps necessary to attend. Again, Chris Black.
When they get their GED right now as their task, then we offer them to enroll if they'd like to. That's one of the easier online schools to enroll because there's no fee charged. They're pretty happy with that. We also encourage them to apply for financial aid because there's a lot of money out there to be gained, and they will get a packet from the school saying they're accepted, and they're extremely happy that's a giant accomplishment for them.
Students who do go on to post-secondary education following release, whether it be at Ivy Tech or another institution, typically report back to DYS their enrollment status and their major, and DYS tracks this information to chart the progress of these former students. For DYS, family members and other caring adults are critical to the success of the youth in their care. The agency has made connecting and engaging families a top priority for all staff across all facility programs and departments. As Mark Canola told us,
overall at the facilities, family engagement is our number one goal. Right now, in the past year to 2 years, we've expanded visitation to just about any hour that a parent can try to make it in. We try to provide them access to their students, but when they come in to participate in any of our treatment or transition activities, we try to reward the families with extra visitation time afterwards. But, with the caveat being that you come in and help do the work and learn about what's going on with your student. We're expanding also our multimedia access in all the facilities as we're piloting through our JPay program that students will be able to, parents can use their smartphones to call directly into kiosks in the facilities and be able to participate, not only visit with their student on their living units, but also we'll have various kiosks in our departments that we can have teleconferences just like this one, but with parents being involved. And it's almost like a Skype system, kind of similar to Skype. So there will be eventually a video conferencing component at sites across the state, such as in parole and probation offices, we're hoping eventually. And that way there can be more parent participation. So we try to involve them. Some of the facilities, Pendleton Juvenile, their superintendent runs a parents meeting every weekend to allow students to come in and tour the facility so they can actually see where their students are living and meet everyone who's there. Most of the schools do open houses on a regular basis, so just like a regular high school would have open house to meet with almost have student, teacher, parent conferences. We do, a couple of the facilities do parent fun nights so that they can just have the parents come in and while they're having fun with their student, we try to talk to them about what their student's doing for coping techniques and things like that. And we try to pass on as much information as we can to the parents.
Family members are also critical components of planning for and tracking progress of students, especially those students with disabilities within the facilities. As Judy McIntosh told us,
we do hold special education conferences and always invite parents to join us in that effort. Many join us via the phone. Some are able to come to the facilities in person. And besides that, we also issue report cards every 9 weeks for our students to keep our parents informed about the student progress.
Lindsay Pound shared that families are also invited to share in celebrations of youth successes within the facilities.
At Logansport, we also host a GED or high school graduation, which will now involve the TASC as well, where the students have an opportunity to walk in a real graduation ceremony where they're wearing caps and gowns and are presented with their diplomas. We invite the parents and families to take part in their child's graduation, and immediately following that graduation, they get to take part in a reception where they get cake and punch, kind of like a graduation open house, and they get that extra time with their students to celebrate their successes.
And of course, engaging families is a major component of transition efforts in each facility, especially when it comes to aftercare supports that help ensure an exited student's success once back in the community. Aftercare services begin with a discussion between each department within the facility and a youth's family members. Again, Mark Canola.
And when, as a student nears release, the treatment department specifically, we try to communicate in a final phone conference exactly what the aftercare plans are from the other departments so that the parent is aware of it, and the student also leaves with an entire transition package or portfolio right, and we explain that to the parent at release so that the correctional case manager or counselor will meet with the parent that we're releasing the student to and go through all the materials the student's leaving with so that they're aware of everything that they've got with them. And so that way, that when they leave that day, they could be going to school to complete their enrollment process. Some of the students have gone on temporary leaves and have job applications completed that they can drop off. We try to do a lot of that right at that final release day. And we're looking for creative ways. We're partnering on a couple different committees with state government, trying to figure out a way to get transportation provided for parents to be brought to the facilities. So there's just a lot going on with family engagement.
This process, like the other collaborative processes aimed at helping youth succeed within and after exiting facilities, makes an impact on the youth under DYS care.
And I think for a lot of students, that's the first time that they have that many adults caring about what happens to them. And I think that it's hard to measure that, but I think that goes a long way to student success.
DYS staff's transition efforts don't end when a youth exits a facility. Instead, transition staff are committed to supporting youth however they can once back in the community, whether it's helping them in school or preventing their return to DOC custody. Lindsay Pound's efforts are largely focused on students' academic and vocational success.
One of the things I do offer once the students are released is I just call it additional help, and it could be additional help for anything. I've had students contact me asking if I can help them find money for college, and so I'll refer them to the sites and different information such as the FAFSA and various places where they can go to get grants and scholarships.
Aftercare efforts extend beyond educational and vocational assistance. After recently reassuming jurisdiction over all youth released from juvenile facilities on parole, DYS facility staff now work closely with juvenile parole reintegration specialists. As Mark Canola told us, these individuals play an important role in aftercare services for the highest risk youth exiting facilities.
Those staff are responsible to come into the facilities, meet with our staff, work with our transition staff, treatment staff, mental health staff on those aftercare plans, and then they'll take the students and keep following them through their 30 to 90 day, sometimes 6 months aftercare through parole. So we're hoping that by having specialized parole agents again who just work with juveniles, that we'll do a much better job of supporting our highest risk students.
DYS staff are also playing an important role within the juvenile courts for youth who struggle once back in the community and those who reoffend.
We've embedded ourselves in many of the courts, myself included. We will go visit if there's a student who's struggling. A lot of times we get phone calls now and they ask for our advice on if it would be better to send the student back to the Department of Correction or not. And so we try to help them find alternatives to incarceration after a student leaves. So if a student's struggling, we all try to work together with the county to get that student services so they don't have to be reoffended and come back.
The role of DYS staff in the lives of youth who have exited facilities is somewhat limited legally, but as Mark told us,
the students really have to contact us more often than not. But as we expand and work with other agents and through the legislation, we're getting more and more doors open where a student can come back and get help temporarily and get back out there.
Indiana is also currently working on statewide system of care grants that would increase access to community-based services, especially in rural counties, so that schools and other agencies have alternatives to returning youth who struggle in the community back to the care of the Department of Corrections. All of these efforts reflect the department's and the Division of Youth Services' commitment to doing what it takes to help youth in their care succeed while they are in custody and prepare them and support their success after they leave. As Mark put it,
the DOC is less about, and we have to explain this to other people in Indiana, we're not a punishment-focused organization as maybe we were 20 years ago. It really is about embracing the student and showing them that there are adults who want to help them, no matter, even if they're at this very late stage of the juvenile justice system.
In 2012, Maricopa County, Arizona created a strategic plan calling for the reduction of juvenile recidivism to 15% by the year 2015. Seeing this as an opportunity, the Maricopa County Education Service Agency pitched the idea to the county of saving $34 to $36 million over 5 years
by engaging 900 youth exiting secure care in their schools and communities, thereby preventing their return to custody. The county liked the sound of that, and with an initial $2.7 million investment from the county's jail budget, Transforming Juveniles Through Successful Transition was born. Dottie Wadraska is the Director of Juvenile Transition for the county and leads this program. Here she shares more about the county's comprehensive approach to successfully transitioning youth out of secure care and back into educational success in the community.
Our project is called Transforming Juveniles Through Successful Transition, and it's actually a collaboration initiated by Maricopa County Education Service Agency. We go by the acronym of MAKISA. Our partners are the Maricopa County Juvenile Probation Department, the Maricopa County Adult Probation Department, and Sheriff's Office of Maricopa County, as well as the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections. We are funded by the County Board of Supervisors here in Maricopa County, which is your greater Phoenix area. It is an area of urban as well as rural environments, and so we serve the entire county. The mission is to increase the number of juveniles successfully reintegrated into the community through a coordinated transition support, thereby reducing recidivism and expense to the system.
The project is made possible by a broad-based collaboration of many stakeholders around the county.
Our advisory board consists of 85 partners from 50 different agencies, all different fields, treatment, education, juvenile justice, foundations, business, across the board to help move this project forward.
After starting last June in the first year of a $6 million investment by the county, Transforming Juveniles Through Successful Transition, or TJST, is currently working with 300 youth. To further support these efforts, MAKISA, on behalf of its partners, recently won an Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Second Chance Juvenile Reentry Implementation Grant.
And that grant is designed for two things: to provide gap funding for mental health services for youth in our program, and capacity building in the sense of training our partners to know how to work more effectively with this particular population.
The transition process for TJST starts with referrals from one of the program's partners.
We ask that we get the referral while the youngster is still in secure care. And even though education and career is a big emphasis for us, we approach this from 4 domains that is supported by resiliency research. We help to get the youngsters positively engaged and affiliated in 4 areas. Of course, education and career, very important because they are juveniles. Home and family is another domain, hobbies and recreation, and community and service. So by helping the youngsters set goals in those 4 areas and help them engage to achieve those goals, we make the sustainability of the transformation.
And this idea of transformation is essential to TJST's model.
The language that we chose was very, very particular. Transforming juveniles through successful transition. Transformation has to come from within. So this change has to come from within, and we work to engage the youngsters in their own transformation.
TJST is purposefully not a court-ordered program. Instead, the program takes the onus on themselves to engage youth and their families in the transformation process.
Because that's the only way they're going to get to transformation, because when you're court-ordered, you have a level of compliance that would stop when the court order ends, and so we wanted to engage them.
And while youth and families can opt out of the program at any time, thus far TJST has 99% cooperation, because those they serve realize the benefits of involvement. The program also has the added benefit of not contributing to court order violations, which can result in youth being sent back to juvenile custody. Once a youth is referred and still in secure care, TJST's caseworkers, which they call transition facilitators, begin the process of engaging and building relationships with youth. The process from there is very structured and informed by youth development research.
We have an alignment between the stages of change: forming, norming, storming, performing, transforming, and sustaining are the stages of change that we've aligned with the stages of transition. And each of them has a particular duration of time. Our target time to get the youngsters into the transforming stage is 90 to 180 days, because that's supported by research, again, that if they make it through and they can get engaged, they have a good chance of making it. And then sustaining 180 days beyond, and then we track them.
Each step in the process is tracked and carefully monitored by program staff, with the end goal of transitioning a youth out of secure care and back into the community successfully. Success requires not only preparing the youth, but also working closely with the schools who receive youth returning from secure care. Angie Pogue is McKeesa's Director of Literacy and Prevention, and working with TJST's advisory board, she initiated the process of developing relationships with Maricopa's public schools.
So our Education and Career Committee came up with some things that need to deliver criteria for vetting our schools. So for that criteria, we went to alternative schools in the Valley. Some of the things they thought was important, well, are they accredited or the process of being accredited? Are they flexible schedules? Do they take our youth whenever they come from secure care? Will they accept the credits they earn there? If they started classes, can they continue? So we online, plus we went to the schools, phone calls, visits, we had a vetting process.
This vetting process helped McKeesa identify those schools that were willing and able to partner in the transition program and form the foundation of TJST, which has grown over time. The majority of schools now working with TJST staff are the county's alternative schools, which were already uniquely suited to meet the needs of high-risk students.
So we currently have 18 MOUs, which involves 30 different schools in Maricopa County that our youth go to. We do have other schools that the kids go to that we're also working with them, but we have 30 partner schools we have identified that we work closely with.
These memoranda of understanding provide the structure and the assurances that make the transition services and support that the TJST team provides for students as they leave secure care possible. From the moment a youth leaves a facility with the goal of returning to school, Angie and the transition facilitators get to work.
Part of what we want to do, we know it's really important with the first couple of days, first few days as soon as the kids get out, they get into schools immediately. So we try to have the academic records ready, the transcripts, because the first thing the schools are going to want to know is how the youth doing, what are their records. So those are some things we try to have in place.
McKeesa also has MOUs in place with the secure care facilities youth are exiting, which ensure timely transfer of student records from the facility to the youth's next placement. And while the process isn't always perfect, the relationships do make a difference.
And when the youth first start in the program, they sign release records. The parents do and the youth do both, so we can get records, we can have access to those. Sometimes we still struggle, but a lot of times just making a phone call, we're able to get records in a timely manner to get them to the school. Sometimes when they're at the facility, they don't have their previous high school records, they don't have those, so it's following back with that previous high school, getting those records. But I do think we have a pretty good relationship with our other partners where the kids are coming from to help get those records in a timely manner to get them into a school.
Once the youth is re-enrolled in a community school, the transition facilitators work closely with them, helping the youth adjust and setting goals in each of the 4 domains to plot out a course for future success. The goals are very much designed to meet the youth's needs and preferences, whether that be attending and completing high school, getting a GED, or going on to post-secondary education or beginning career exploration and training. From there, the schools work closely with the transition facilitators to check on the youth and make sure they're doing okay. The schools will reach out to TJST program staff to let them know if a student is struggling in any way, and the program team will provide added support as needed in collaboration with the school. In addition to the transition facilitators, the program also supports youth through coaches and mentors, who are particularly helpful for youth struggling academically and those with learning or other disabilities.
They're coming, a lot of them reading on the 3rd and 4th grade level. We have a lot of students in special ed. We have been able to get a few mentors to work with the youth, helping the alternative schools with the kids.
McKeesa supports their partner schools in other ways as well, helping them to foster success for the youth returning from secure care by helping staff address non-academic factors that impact school performance and behavior.
We've offered some training also to our partner schools. Some of the trainings we have a problem with drug use. We know that's a problem, so Teen AA is one of the programs we offer. Also TOPS, which is that teen outreach program. There was also a request for LGBTQ training from some of our schools. Some of our youth coming from secure care falls into that category, and as teachers and as staff, how do we work with those youth?
Much of this training and support is offered through the agency and community partners involved with TJST. Mental health, behavioral health, and many others go into the schools and work with staff, students, and families to make the youth's educational experiences positive ones. These partnerships not only extend the supports and services offered by TJST, but they aid in the program's long-term sustainability. Brian Patterson is the Director of Leadership and Student Engagement for Ombudsman Education Services and directs one of Maricopa's local learning centers. His school traditionally receives many of the students who are pushed out of the district's other schools, and he works closely with the McKeesa team. For Brian, working with TJST was a natural fit.
Yeah, all of our students are considered at risk for some various reasons, mostly behavioral. And so the transition students that came in were just, they fit in with what we do anyway.
The process within Bryan's school for students returning from secure care is the same as it is for any other incoming student.
And we start off with an intake where we start to build a model of how we're going to relate with that student. And so they get the same treatment that any other student in the center gets. And we can pick them up wherever they are as far as their academics. And we consider academics a behavior too. And so we help teach them how to make their more effective choices and to understand how their own brain is working. And a lot of times we can help them catch up on academics because it's an individualized program. We can pick them up wherever they start and set goals for them about where we're going to go. And we do, within the school, try to expose them to career opportunities. We go through a program that we call ECAP that's for career and placement in the future. And most of our students leave. Of our centers in Phoenix, which there are 6, we had 168 graduates this year, and we got $218,000 in scholarships and funding for them for their future. And so some of those students who have come through transitions programs are moving on to college and careers that can be productive in the community.
Bryan and his staff appreciate the efforts of the TJST transition facilitators in supporting those youth in the center who are returning from secure care.
And the transition specialist from the county stop by, sometimes weekly, it depends on the student and the intensity of their problems, and are very supportive of that. So that's been a good partnership.
Broad-based collaboration is at the heart of TJST. In fact, McKeesa prefers not to think of TJST as a program, but rather as a collaboration between many stakeholders with the shared goal of success for youth exiting secure care. A lot of early effort went into identifying collaborative partners and forming the relationships that would make sustainable collaboration possible. And with the strong collaboration came the ability to address the challenges of transitioning youth head-on. Again, Dottie Wadraska.
And so we tend to, what we call poke the system, ask the questions of, if this isn't working, looking at data, if it isn't working, what else could we do? And then some of the biggest challenges is that when you're working within different types of systems, education, justice, treatment systems, to first of all, to build a common language and a common goal, which we did with our partners, and help them see which roles that they play in transition. We made it very clear we don't supplant anyone, we supplement whatever they're doing. And one of the features we have that helped us overcome some barriers was that we have no statutory jurisdictional restrictions in terms of age. Juvenile probation, juvenile corrections must release a youngster at the age of 18, which is the age of majority. We can continue with them. So what we told our partners is that any success that they've had with this youngster, we can carry on and guarantee. So if a youngster's successful, it's everybody's success. We truly are a village approach.
Most of the biggest challenges TJST faces are procedural in nature and have to do with agency policies and regulations. Even the way partners can and do refer youth to the program isn't always a smooth process. And there have been particular problems with schools specifically.
Oftentimes the schools don't want our youngsters. That's why we went through the process of setting up memorandum of understanding with partner schools that do want our youngsters.
According to the McKeesa team, the pressure of high-stakes testing and limited resources to help remediate years of lost academic progress are often contributing factors to some community schools making the return for youth more cumbersome. Coupled with that are the challenges presented when a youth wants to return to his or her home school or to another more traditional community school. As Angie Pogue told us,
with some of our youth, they want to go back to their home school, which is a traditional high school. We know for a lot of our youth that's not setting them up for success, so we start showing the youth other options, because we know if we can get them in a smaller school where their needs will be met, they're more likely to be able to build success. Some of our youth that have gone on directly to a high school, they've had difficulty in the time transitioning to a smaller school.
And while the alternative schools, like the one run by Brian Patterson, have been welcoming and supportive environments for youth returning from secure care, they still face challenges in helping students stay on track and closing long-standing academic gaps.
So many of our kids are below are behind and below level. And I know we want trying to increase our graduation rate of our kids graduating in 4 years, and we're talking about kids who are taking the majority 6 and 7 years to graduate.
To help students more immediately experience success upon entering, many alternative schools have allowed students options in their schedules to make the workload more manageable.
Some of our alternative schools, the kids only take 1 or 2 classes at a time because they want them to have success in one class before they try to take on 5 or 6. Like I said, if they can't pass one, they're not going to be able to pass 5 or 6.
Other challenges for TJST staff include connecting the youth in alternative settings to traditional school-based sports teams and other extracurricular activities. TJST has worked closely with community organizations like the YMCA and others to provide these important recreational opportunities. Brian Patterson and his team take the challenges in stride. Within their learning centers, the students involved with TJST are no different than the other students they serve.
Yeah, for us, they're pretty typical of the group that we deal with anyway. But understanding that they are behind in credits and their tendency is to maintain their own power need by acting tough or acting bad rather than being perceived as dumb. And so to build the relationship so that they can feel comfortable in admitting where they are and moving forward. Some students just aren't quite ready for that yet. And our ratio is usually about 1 teacher for every 10 students. But some of these guys at times need more of a one-on-one for at least the first 3 weeks of their tenure with us.
For Brian and his staff, the approach is pretty simple when it comes to helping all of their students succeed.
We open up the doors where we just make allowances for wherever they come in and just mainstream them with other students. And teenagers, when they're enrolled in a place where people care about them and they're not just a number or a statistic, and they see that somebody is willing to go out of their way to help them, they tend to succeed and live up to the expectations of the adults in the room.
And the TJST team has found that these relationships between students in the program and the teachers in the schools like Brian's, as well as the willingness on the part of the schools to do whatever it takes to help a youth returning from secure care succeed, are what make the program possible and so successful. Tracking those successes, as well as areas for improvement, is very important to Makisa and critical for their continuous quality improvement model for TJST. The county uses a system called Efforts to Outcomes, which was developed specifically for the program. They use the system to report out quarterly to their board and partners, and according to Dottie Wadraska, they've been pleased with what they're seeing each quarter.
The last published report that we had, we were reporting out on 273 youngsters that had engaged with us, and we've had quite a bit of success. We have 43% are enrolled in schools, and we're reporting out on the enrollment in school on the 185 youth that are in the community of that 273, because some of them are still behind the wall, obviously. 18% obtained a diploma or GED in the quarter that we were reporting. 10% are currently working as well.
Beyond the data, Angie Pogue has seen firsthand the impact TJST has had thus far on the youth she works with that have successfully transitioned on to continued education.
Well, I know with some of our youth, just the ones we've worked with as far as their education, the fact that some of them were the first ones in their family to get a high school diploma. That just meant so much to them, their family, both. They just could not believe. They never thought that was possible. In one family, then, we started talking about going on to community college. And the moms go, well, that had never happened. Well, filled out the paperwork. He's enrolled in college and doing very well in college. So open the doors and the possibilities to some of these youth that didn't have much of a future. They could not see a future for themselves at all. And I think that's kind of been the most rewarding for our transition facilitators. And right now, we currently have 9 of our youth attending the community college. And again, these are youth that never thought that was possible. They would be able to do that.
And the success is contagious.
We had another youth that decided he was going to go for his GED. Well, his mom decided that if her son was going to go do it, that she was going to do it also because she never received hers. So both the mom and the son were able to get their GED. So the youth are impacting people around them also, because now, like the one boy said, I can now tell my brothers and sisters that they need to graduate from high school because I did. Sometimes we will have our youth call their transition facilitator and say, can I bring a friend of mine? He wants to go to college too. Can you come help him with the process? So it's also reaching out to other members and not just that one youth director that we're working with.
Makisa is, of course, also interested in outcomes for youth in their program related to justice involvement. If you'll remember, TJST was created to meet the county's goal of 15% juvenile recidivism by the year 2015. Dottie and her team are proud of their successes in this area as well.
In terms of the recidivism, which is, of course, something that we look at very closely, we've only had 47 youth recidivate out of 273, and I think the highlight here is 66% of them have gone back for technical violations of probation, which is a whole lot less serious than new offenses. Only 8% have committed a new offense.
And even if a youth does return to the custody of the juvenile justice system, they have not failed in the eyes of the TJST team. Rather, the team's efforts are renewed to make the youth's next transition more successful.
We don't give up on a youngster. Even though a youngster returns, we follow them. We will follow these youngsters for 3 years. And so if they go back in, we begin the process with them all over again, and the goal setting and what can we do to get there. So we are building the consistency and the structure that these youngsters need.
These outcomes are not merely stats to the Makisa team. They represent a means of testing promising practices for what works and doesn't work in juvenile transition. The team has big plans for the data captured in efforts to outcomes, with an eye towards sustained success over the long run.
We're learning a lot as we're going, so we're going to be able to do trend lines, and prediction as we gather more data. And we study the data every day, and so our data is looking very good. But the caveat that I want to mention is this is only less than a year operations. So we're looking really good. We're not the silver bullet. We're not even the silver buckshot. But we know this is working, and it's working pretty well. But as you know, looking at recidivism at a 3-year window is what you really need to do to make sure that it's sticking.
There's no doubt Maricopa County's transforming juveniles through successful transition has made a positive impact on the lives of youth exiting secure care and returning to the community to continue their education, and in a fairly short period of time. The program will continue to grow and work towards reaching and surpassing their goals, never giving up on a youth. Dottie, her team, and their partners hope TJST is a model for jurisdictions around the country to learn from.
This has great promise. It's all evidence-based practice, and it's designed to be replicable in urban as well as rural settings. So the principles we follow of engagement, the 4 domains, the dose and duration focus that we have on transition stages as well as stages of change, this is where we need to go. We're told that we're the missing link in the entire transition process, and we believe that's true.
Indiana and Maricopa County are just 2 jurisdictions that are prioritizing educational and related success for youth leaving the custody of the juvenile justice system. But their successful approaches are surely models others can look to. We hope their experiences and the practices and strategies they've shared resonate with your work. We'd like to thank all of our guests for their time with us: Heather Griller-Clark, Judy McIntosh, Mark Canola, Chris Black, Lindsay Pounds, Dottie Wadraska, Angie Pogue, and Brian Patterson. And our thanks too to Alexandra Woods for her exploration of Indiana's work. And we invite you to continue this conversation by writing us at ndtac@air.org. We also encourage you to visit the archive of this event on our website, www.neglected-delinquent.org. On that page, you'll find resources and additional information from today's guests. And if there's ever anything NDTAC can do to help you with your transition efforts, don't hesitate to contact us. For NDTAC and this NND InFocus program, I'm Nicholas Reed. Good day, everyone.